Morning arrived with an eerie stillness across Anime Academy as the memory of the red dimensional rift lingered like a nightmare everyone tried to pretend never happened. The sunlight looked normal, but carried an unnatural sharpness, making even the brightest hallway feel like it was hiding something waiting to crawl out. Naruto walked through the corridor with forced confidence, but the nervous flicker in his eyes betrayed how deeply the mysterious whisper from the rift unsettled him. Sasuke walked beside him in tense silence, his Sharingan briefly flaring as if trying to sense the same familiar yet impossible presence haunting his thoughts. Inside the classroom, Gojo leaned casually against his desk with playful charm, but there was an almost invisible tightness in his aura, revealing genuine concern. His voice echoed cheerfully through the room, but the cheerful tone couldn't hide the faint distortion flickering around his infinity like static from another dimension. Luffy continued eating meat on his desk, as usual. Yet even he paused occasionally to glance upward where small red sparks pulsed across the ceiling. Levi entered the room with a deadly glare, clearly irritated by supernatural disruptions interfering with what he believed should be a perfectly orderly morning routine. Deku sat with trembling excitement while scribbling theories about cross-dimensional anomalies, cursed energy distortions, and unpredictable threats emerging from beyond logical understanding. Light! Yagami observed everyone quietly, analyzing each reaction with the calculating sharpness of someone who saw danger as an opportunity rather than a curse. Gojo finally revealed that the rift had not disappeared entirely, but instead left behind a thin, unstable scar spreading through the school like growing cracks. Naruto slammed his palms on the desk and demanded answers because he clearly heard something calling to him with a chillingly familiar voice. Sasuke's jaw tightened as he admitted the voice sounded disturbingly close to someone none of them wanted to confront, someone tied to a darkness deeper than rage. Deku nervously asked Gojo whether this anomaly could connect multiple universes in unpredictable ways, possibly merging worlds meant to remain permanently separated. Gojo scratched his head and admitted even he didn't fully understand the rift's nature, which frightened the entire class more than any monster could. Light smirked softly as he suggested that perhaps the voice simply belonged to a being far superior to all of them, provoking several annoyed stares immediately. Luffy finally swallowed his food and declared confidently that whatever came through the rift would definitely be punchable, which barely eased anyone's tension. Levi muttered that none of this mattered as long as something didn't destroy the cleaning schedule again. But even he couldn't hide underlying unease. Suddenly, the classroom lights flickered violently, and a pulse of red energy surged through the room like a heartbeat coming from another universe entirely. Gojo instantly activated Infinity with serious intent, forming a protective field around the students while staring at the air above them with cold focus. A thin vertical tear split open in the space near the ceiling, shimmering like reality itself was being sliced by an unseen blade from a distant void. Naruto's breathing grew heavy as the same chilling whisper echoed faintly once again, repeating his name with eerie familiarity that clawed at his spirit. Sasuke's Sharingan spun fiercely as he sensed a twisted chakra signature overlapping with something older, darker, and frighteningly personal from his past. Deku clutched his notebook tightly as he felt the air warp around him, the pressure almost identical to powerful villains he encountered in his own world. Light watched the rift with aesthetic fascination, his expression calm enough to seem almost welcoming toward whatever entity tried to push through. Gojo stepped forward and forced the rift close with raw cursed energy, his hand glowing intensely as he sealed the tear with expert precision. The air snapped back into normality like a broken string being abruptly retied, leaving behind a shaking classroom filled with heavy, anxious breathing. Gojo sighed and admitted the situation was far worse than he initially thought because something intelligent was actively trying to reopen the dimensional scar. Naruto clenched his fists tightly and vowed to face whatever was calling him, even if he had no idea what kind of nightmare awaited him beyond the rift. Sasuke glared toward the ceiling, declaring coldly that if the voice belonged to who he suspected, then this school was now standing on the edge of disaster. Levi clicked his tongue and complained again, but even he shifted into readiness, sensing the incoming threat, demanded more than simple irritation. Luffy punched his palm with a big grin. Excited for another battle? Even though everyone else clearly understood this enemy wasn't normal? Deku asked Gojo whether multiple worlds merging could create catastrophic side effects, potentially rewriting physics and destroying stable existence entirely. Gojo answered with unsettling honesty, explaining that if the rift continued expanding, they might all face a collapsing reality where universes bleed uncontrollably together. Light quietly suggested that perhaps the being behind the rift desired complete unification, which to him sounded like the beginning of a new era of judgment. Gojo ignored Light's ominous phrasing and instructed everyone to prepare for full-scale dimensional instability training, which caused several groans across the classroom. Naruto shouted that he was ready for anything. Although the tremor in his voice betrayed a fear he desperately tried to hide. Sasuke crossed his arms and declared he would confront the source personally if Gojo failed to identify the exact origin of the whisper. Deku anxiously took notes, documenting how dimensional anomalies could target specific individuals based on unique energy signatures or emotional vulnerabilities. Levi sharpened his blades, even though nobody understood how exactly they would help against cosmic distortion. But it made him feel prepared. Gojo raised his hand to silence the class and announced with unwavering seriousness that Episode 3's True Challenge had officially begun. The air outside Anime Academy vibrated with strange tension as Gojo gathered the entire class on the training field, the ground beneath them humming with leftover energy still leaking from the earlier dimensional disturbance. A pale mist rolled across the field, despite the bright afternoon sun, swirling unnaturally as if pulled by an invisible heartbeat echoing through the cracks between worlds. Naruto stared at the mist with unwavering focus because he could feel the voice from before pressing gently against his mind again, like fingers tapping from beyond a sealed door. Sasuke activated his Sharingan instantly, tracking every flicker of movement in the fog with surgical precision, refusing to let another unknown presence surprise him. Gojo lifted one hand casually as if conducting an orchestra, yet the seriousness in his expression revealed he was analyzing every vibration across the entire dimensional field. Deku gripped his notebook nervously while standing beside Bo, who pretended not to care, even though his palms crackled with explosive tension waiting for any threat to appear. Luffy bounced excitedly on his heels, punching the air a few times, while grinning as if hoping the fog would turn into something he could hit immediately. Light Yagami stood calmly in the back with calculating eyes, fascinated by the energy waves spreading across the ground like ripples from an unseen cosmic stone. Levi positioned himself strategically behind the group, silently preparing his movement routes, as though anticipating a sudden ambush emerging from the shifting mist. Gojo announced that the rift energy was growing more aggressive and intelligent, meaning something beyond the tier was learning how to interact with their world deliberately. The moment Gojo finished speaking, the mist shuddered as a deep echo rolled across the field, vibrating through their chests like a distant roar from another dimension. Naruto instinctively stepped forward with fierce determination, declaring he wasn't afraid of whatever was whispering to him, even though the trembling air suggested he should be. Sasuke reminded Naruto coldly that recklessness could get everyone killed, especially when facing an enemy that could manipulate space and emotion simultaneously. Gojo told them both to stay calm, because the rift responded strongly to emotional spikes, meaning anger, fear, or desperation could unintentionally widen the dimensional tear. Deku frantically scribbled the new information while mumbling theories about emotional resonance, fields, and multiversal energy synchronization, completely lost in scientific panic. Luffy asked Gojo whether eating meat in the presence of cosmic danger was considered disrespectful, causing several students to stare at him silently in disbelief. The mist spiraled upward suddenly, twisting into a massive vortex that cast a dark shadow across the field, pulling leaves, debris, and energy toward its spinning core. Gojo reacted instantly by unleashing infinity, forming a protective barrier that pushed the vortex back slightly while stabilizing the ground beneath their feet. Naruto's breath caught in his throat as the same whisper echoed again, clearer than ever, saying his name with chilling familiarity that sliced straight into his soul. Sasuke gritted his teeth as he detected a second voice, layered behind the first. One dripping with venomous hatred he recognized instinctively, though he wished he didn't. Levi raised his blades and braced himself as the vortex expanded outward, warping sunlight and distorting the air, like reality was stretching too thin. Bakugo blasted forward angrily, shouting that he refused to run from fog. But Gojo snapped him back with infinity before he could recklessly dive into the anomaly. Light stepped closer with unnatural calmness and whispered that the presence behind the vortex felt like a divine judge observing its subjects before passing sentence. Deku trembled as he sensed the overwhelming pressure filling the atmosphere, realizing the power level was unlike anything he had experienced in his own world before. Gojo gripped the air with both hands, forcing the vortex to slow, and through the distortion appeared a shadow shaped vaguely like a human figure standing between dimensions. Naruto's heart dropped as the silhouette raised its head, and a familiar outline of spiky hair and glowing eyes flickered through the swirling red energy. Sasuke's voice cracked with shock because he recognized the shape too. Realizing it looked like someone they both knew, but twisted by a deeper darkness, the silhouette leaned forward slightly, and a distorted voice ripped through the field, declaring that the world they stood in was only a fragile shell soon to break. Naruto shouted for the figure to reveal its identity, but the shadow only laughed. A chilling sound that echoed with corrupted confidence and unspeakable rage. Gojo pushed his cursed energy to its limits and slammed the dimensional wound shut, causing the shadow to vanish instantly as the vortex collapsed with explosive force. A powerful shockwave blasted across the field, sending students tumbling backward while the ground cracked under the overwhelming pressure of collapsing reality. Naruto rolled to his feet, breath shaking, demanding answers from Gojo. Because he knew that silhouette wasn't an illusion, but someone undeniably real, Sasuke clenched his jaw and admitted the figure looked unmistakably like an alternate version of someone they once fought, someone they thought was gone forever. Gojo stood in silence for a moment, analyzing the lingering particles of cursed dimensional energy floating through the air like fading embers. He finally declared that the rift connected to a universe where certain destinies were reversed, twisted, or corrupted into darker versions of people they once trusted. Deku gasped as he realized the implications. Understanding that variants of heroes and villains could cross over if the rift kept growing stronger, Light's smile widened subtly, because the idea of corrupted counterparts intrigued him, especially if they possessed knowledge of worlds beyond mortal reach. Levi sheathed his blades while muttering that this entire situation was becoming unnecessarily complicated, but his eyes remained fixed on the horizon cautiously. Luffy shouted that he wanted to fight the shadow version immediately, clearly misunderstanding the gravity of the danger surrounding them. Gojo placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder and explained that the rift specifically calling to him meant he was somehow connected to the incoming threat directly. Naruto swallowed hard, remembering the distorted voice and realizing it wasn't hatred he sensed, but a strange pain hidden beneath layers of rage. Sasuke stepped beside him and promised he wouldn't let Naruto face whatever came alone. No matter how twisted or powerful the alternate being became, Gojo warned the entire class that the dimensional scar was evolving and that before long, something far stronger might force its way through completely. The students looked at each other with rising determination as the sun slowly dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the trembling school grounds. The wind whispered through the broken trees as if carrying faint echoes of the shadows' laughter, reminding them the next confrontation was inevitable. And as night settled over Anime Academy, Gojo declared that their true battle across the multiverse was no longer approaching, had already begun.